This is Leah Steele. Welcome to the Wealth Witch podcast. Just a few years ago, I experienced complete financial collapse. We lost a business, our home, and a car. My husband was selling plasma to pay for diapers and formula. I was living a life I hated, and I was miserable. It was the lowest part of my life. It ended up being my biggest blessing. Just a few short years later, I've designed the life of my dreams. I live a life of luxury in beautiful Bali, Indonesia, travel the world, and spend my days helping others manifest wealth and abundance. Living a purpose-led life changed everything for me. This podcast is about my journey, my top tips and tools for manifestation, and interviews with all the amazing, world-changing, inspiring people I meet along the way. Welcome to my world. Hey, everyone. I am so excited because today I am here with a man that I think is one of the most truth-telling, badass men in the online coaching and mentoring space, Mr. Kyrie Oliver. Hey, Kyrie.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, thank you again for having me on.
Thanks for being on. Okay, so I feel like we need to just get this out of the way now before we even jump into this interview. Did that bitch Carole Baskin kill her husband?
Oh my gosh. First of all, I've been so obsessed with that. I watched the entire documentary with my mouth open. Like, this can't be real life, and it is, and I think it's hilarious. She absolutely did it. There's way too many things available to her to have made that super easy. Plus, homeboy was a multimillionaire, and she doesn't seem like a dumb lady. Carole Baskins did it.
We're talking about the Netflix series Tiger King, which is primarily about Joe Exotic, but also this woman, Carole Baskin. And this reality television show, The Tiger King, has taken the world by storm. And I wanted to just touch on this for a minute because the same thing, like I can't even talk about it. I was so dumbfounded. And every episode, I was just like, how is this real life? You know, I think that based on what's happening in our world right now and how crazy everything is in our world right now, I really think that this show has been as popular as it has been because it's really the only thing more crazy and ridiculous than what's actually happening to us right now.
I think it was perfect timing for it. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but perfect timing for that show to come out.
Yeah, so we're living in crazy times right now. And this interview with you is part of my Becoming Wealthy series. So I definitely want to talk to you about your history and how you got to where you are and, a little bit about like what you're doing in the world. But I do think it's important to just kind of touch on that we're living in strange times right now. And a lot of people in the world right now are struggling with safety, stability, and security. And I think it's important to say that and to note that because this show is all about empowerment, and this show is all about choice in wealth creation, and this show is all about shifting into a new paradigm of wealth creation, which I know that you're so familiar with. But I do just want to acknowledge it, and I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of people out there that are really caught up and trapped in fear and lack and scarcity mentality. And I'm just wondering, is there anything that you want to add to that or that you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, first, absolutely, because it is super scary for people. I mean, most people don't have the luxury of doing what we do, first of all. As soon as this happened, I started to realize just how privileged a position we are in to, for the most part, be totally responsible for our own incomes and have our incomes directly correlate to the energy we put out there. Most people don't get to do that. Most people are still trading their time for money. And as businesses get frantic, as businesses have to shut down, employees have to go or employees have to get their pay cut. And I grew up in that. I remember what it was like, watching a parent get laid off when I was younger. I remember what it was like not sometimes knowing where the next meal came from. And I see it's widespread now. So you get to like feel the impacts on a much bigger level. I think at the same time, without discrediting that, without taking away from the pain people are feeling, there's an opportunity right now to take advantage of things that we maybe were pushing off. Everybody tells themselves, if I just had enough time, I would accomplish X. Now's your time to do X. We now have an opportunity to do that and take advantage of that, whether spending more time with your children or learning to master a new skill or a new hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I feel like time is our most precious resource. And as a global society, we had really gotten to a point where time was always overextended.
Yep.
That we didn't feel like we had time. Even me in my business, it was a constant shuffle of other resources to make more time for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I love that you brought that up, because I really feel like we do have an amazing opportunity right now to begin to really value time as the precious resource that it is. It's like, now we have all this time on our hands, and what are we doing with it? It's funny because the last 3 months, I feel like I was in this little bit of this funk, and I actually wasn't working that much. And I don't know what I was doing. I was sort of wasting my days. And as soon as the lockdown really hit globally, it was like all of a sudden I woke up to how precious the resource of time is. And now it's like a fire's been lit under my ass, and I can't stop. Like, I can't stop spending time with my family. I can't stop working. Every moment of every day is so precious to me.
I think we're going to see the people who put in the work during this time. As soon as it's over, the fruits of your labor or the consequences of your inactivity are going to shine very brightly after this is done. There are going to be people who were, before this, they were the top of their game. They were at the top of their field. And now they're going to be probably obsolete or very insignificant because of the amount of people actually putting in work during this time to actually grow new skills or hone in on skills they currently have. I think a lot of new people are going to emerge as industry leaders after this, and more power to them. I'd say take the people who are at the top of the mountain chilling right now, tear them down from whatever podium they're on, and take their spot. It's going to be very illuminating right after this stuff is done.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a post last night about the changing of the guard. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely that. Like, I absolutely believe right now the new leaders are being called to step up. Yep. And you may be out there listening to this podcast knowing that what's meant for you is to lead communities, to help people, that your divine mission work includes leading people. Now is the time. There's never been a better time than right now. And I absolutely agree with you that many of the leaders in the online space, they're going to disappear. They're going away because they are currently buying into all of this fear fuckery. They are not only buying into it themselves, but they're spreading it through their communities. And the changing of the guard is upon us. It's happening. I'm convinced of it.
I'm excited. Those of us who have actually put in the work are excited for times like this, for the tumultuousness of the time, because we know how to withstand it. We've done it before. We've been through the difficulty, and difficulty became our norm at one point. So now once it's easy, right before this all happened, we were able to outperform everybody else. And then now that it's difficult, we're used to it. I recognized when this started happening, I switched a little bit back more into my hustle mode that I'm very familiar with. I remember the 18, 20-hour days I was putting in. I know that life so well, especially coming from being a former athlete. I just know how to dip into that whenever it's necessary, that I'm not worried about when times get tough. I know most people are going to fall off, and I revert back to what I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you said that, because me too. Like, I fully am like, I'm back in hustle mode. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, like, I've been there. I've been through the struggle. And, for me, it's like, I actually thrive standing in the fire. So I welcome it. Like, I'm happy here. And in fact, I'm actually emotionally doing a lot better than I have in a long time, because my feet are being held to the fire, because I am feeling that sense of urgency, because I do know that each word that comes out of my mouth or each action that I take is having huge impact right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm here for it.
I'm seeing one of my businesses is marketing. I'm seeing the quantifiable version of that. All my competition's gone. The guys who I was literally vying for ad space with, their businesses crashed because they didn't know how to actually run a business. They were following a trend that was very fun to follow. And as soon as all their distributors in China went down, their business is gone. Oh no, I don't actually know how to run a business. I knew how to do this one little thing and monetize that, as opposed to, I'm a skilled business owner. I'm a resourceful person. I'm going to figure it out no matter what. And that's where I came from. I'm just going to figure it out. It doesn't matter what happens. I literally don't care what happens in the market. I'm going to figure out how to pivot and how to move myself. I had 4 calls with 4 clients who needed to pivot their businesses because of this thing, and we pivoted, and they're all thriving businesses. When you're able to understand what people need from businesses currently, how people need to feel understood and taken care of, your business doesn't have to suffer. But again, when you just follow a trend and read this one book or did this one course to become your expert, you're going to fall off right now. And I like it.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about you. And the first thing I want to say is I know that you don't discuss your personal finances and your personal financial numbers, and I totally respect that. So without that, I would love for you, because this series is about becoming wealthy. And for me, it's about talking to people like you who have, you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You weren't given all of the opportunities that many of the successful entrepreneurs in the world were given. And so I'd love to just talk to you. I know that you were a former Division I football player. Where did you play?
University of Idaho.
Okay, cool. So Division I football player. Talk to me a little bit about, just a little bit about your money story growing up, and then, where you were, how you kind of bridged the gap, and then how you got here to where you are. And we'll talk a little bit more about what you do, because I think that it's really unique, and I want to talk about the interviews that you do. I'm fascinated by that. So I want to talk about that later, but tell me a little bit about your money story and what the adventure and journey has been like for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, like most kids, I don't think I knew that we didn't have money when I was growing up. I knew that I couldn't have everything I wanted, or, we had to pick one pair of shoes and one backpack at the beginning of the school year, and that's what we got, and that's kind of it. But again, I just, because it was my normal, I didn't know that it was lesser than what other people were experiencing. But I joke now that I grew up, my brother and I, he's a year older than I am, raised by a single white mom as two young brown kids in a very, very poor white neighborhood. So I joke that we grew up poor white trash. Again, it was something we didn't really recognize. I tell a story sometimes on podcasts. We used to play what was called the grocery shopping game at my grandparents' house. My mom would wake us up at 11:30 at night, and we'd drive over to Grandma and Grandpa's house, and we'd play the grocery shopping game, which was, let's see if we can get groceries from Grandma and Grandpa's house. We're going to grocery shop out of Grandma and Grandpa's fridge and freezer. And the game was don't wake them up. So my brother and I are bundled up in our little coats in the middle of the night. And the game was to be quiet enough so that Grandma and Grandpa didn't wake up while we were grocery shopping at their house. And if they didn't wake up, we got a prize out of they had like a little candy drawer that they had there. I didn't notice that we couldn't afford groceries, or that we were on food stamps at the time. To me, it was just like, oh, I was talking about this fun game we played when I was younger. And in the middle of the story, it clicked to me like, oh yeah, that meant we couldn't get our own groceries. So we had to go grocery shopping at Grandma and Grandpa's house. And, my mom was too embarrassed at the time to ask. So I just didn't come from understanding what money made available to you. I didn't have it, and nobody around me had it either. It got quite a bit better when my mom married my stepdad, my freshman year of high school. We moved to just the next town over, but from very, very low class community to middle to upper class. And there was a direct kind of divide between the two towns in Northern California where I grew up. And all of a sudden I was around money, but I realized the closeness wasn't there, that like the tight-knit family wasn't there very often. Most of my friends, their parents didn't really care what they did throughout the day. And so I kind of got a weird view of money at that point. I saw that money didn't solve the problem for people. We had our own problems growing up, but people that I now was around had their own set of problems. And then going to college, again, played Division I football, but if we didn't get scholarships, my mom had told us, if my brother and I didn't get scholarships, we weren't going to college, or we were going to community college. That's just kind of what was available for us. I had a pretty crazy time in college. I just went through quite a bit and came out a year later, really just trying to figure myself out. I was physically beaten and jumped by my teammates while I was in college for about an 8-month period. And I've got that story on my Instagram and on a few other platforms, too long for right here, but just went through a really, really crazy time and wanted to just understand myself a little bit better. I knew I wanted to help people, but at 18 years old, I was almost 19. I was like, I don't have the life experience to help people in the capacity that I want to. So how do I get as much life experience as possible without literally speeding up time? And to me, it was, I'm going to borrow the experiences of other people. And so it started off with coworkers, family members, friends, uncle, whoever just really wanted to sit down and talk to me. And there was no reason for it other than I was trying to get a grasp of myself and where I fit in the world and how I was able to relate to other people and their experiences, and then use those to help whoever I was going to help in the future. I didn't know what it was going to be used for. And I just got obsessed with it. When I was 19 until I was 22, I had interviewed probably close to 850 people. I would sometimes do like 8 or 9 of them a day. I would spend my entire day just talking on the phone with people or driving around trying to find the people to talk to. And I've talked to probably any type of person you could think of. I've interviewed 3 death row inmates, doctors, lawyers, politicians, millionaires, billionaires. I've done 65 end-of-life interviews with terminal patients. They all had a maximum of 6 to 9 months to live at the time that I interviewed them. And so sometimes I'd walk in and the guy I interviewed 3 days before wasn't there anymore. And so I really got to experience these people at what was held dear towards the end, what they regretted, literally everything. And that actually started to shape my view of money, because I talked to a guy who I think he'd been worth over $800 million in his life. And I asked him if he could give that all up for a $48,000 a year job and he could change one thing from his past, what would it be? And he said he would give all of it up just to have gone to one of each of his sons' baseball games. He had never gone to a baseball game from either of his 3 sons, had never been to any of the graduations, high school or college, had never shown up to a significant event in their lives, but had made all the money in the world. Overall, I just kind of got this concept that money didn't need to be the goal. Money had to be a byproduct of something bigger and something more impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because, one of the things for me is what I've realized over the years is making money is easy. Like making money, it's not hard. And I think that, we believe it's hard because we're programmed to believe it's hard. We're conditioned to believe it's hard, but making money isn't hard. I think it's more difficult to be lifestyle driven. It's more difficult to invest in experiences with your loved ones. And that's for me, I'm not a financially, now I certainly have benchmarks that I set, but I'm not financially driven. I'm lifestyle driven. Yep. And to me, that's the true challenge, because it's easy to get wrapped up in making money because making money is easy.
Yeah. And it's easy to be that once you've made the money. The hard part is, how do you transition your thought process to being not money driven when you don't have any? And that's the part that I think a lot of people miss and that a lot of teachers don't hit on. I remember the day my mindset shifted. My business partner just moved out and I was making maybe $2,500 a month. I would probably be left with $150 at the end of the month to just do whatever I wanted with. And I'd already moved here to Arizona with no safety net. And I remember the day I decided to not look at my bank account anymore. And I just said, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, serve my clients and find new clients in the way that I know is right for me. And I'm not going to look at my expenses anymore. I'm going to hand my debit card with confidence wherever I go and trust the money's going to be there when I need it. And I did that for a solid 6 months. I did not look at my bank account for 6 months. And at the end of the 6 months, I tripled my income. And I attribute a lot of it to I was done focusing on it. I wanted to focus on the energy that we created. And I didn't want to look at the number. The number didn't matter to me anymore. How do I create that energy around it that's going to make it come to me when I need it and have it be accessible to me? And I think that was one of the biggest shifts I've ever made in my business or life.
So I talk about this as the time when the switch flips. And everybody that I know that's successful, they have a time. They remember like when it was. And I think, it absolutely is a place of deciding that you are held. Like it is deciding that the universe, God, source, all that is, whatever you call it, has got you. That if you commit to showing up in purpose and purpose-led and purpose-driven and delivering your divine mission work, then the universe has got you, and that you're always going to be provided for, and that the money's always going to be there. And same thing, like I remember that point where I just said, you know what? I'm not going to live like this anymore. I'm not going to be constantly stressed and worried about money and worried about whether or not it's going to be there. I know it's going to be there. Yep. I just know it's going to be there.
And I still have that to this day. I don't know how much money's in my bank account. Luckily, my accountant knows, and he's a good friend of mine, but he knows not to tell me how much is in my account at any point in time. I have no idea. And maybe I've taken it to the extreme from the lesson I learned, but I fell in love with what I had learned from it. I fell in love with the fact that I divorced myself from the need for money. It was just there. It was just a tool to do what I'm supposed to do in the world. And I can only focus on now, where am I to be of service, and how do I need to show up, and what do I need to do in order to keep that energy around and keep generating it. But the actual number was of no consequence at that point. And again, it looks crazy when you make the decision. And I would assume the same for you, because there's no quantifiable reason why you should have that much faith in yourself at that point in time. Because usually you haven't made the money yet once you made the decision. But it's that decision with a lack of quantifiable evidence to show the rest of the world and say, hey, here's why. It's just that faith that I think attracts that energy to you that you can then sustain and carry forward and then hopefully teach other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm super interested to know, like, what are some of your personal practices? Like, what are some of the things that you do energetically to align yourself with your desires?
Yeah, I think I just take time for myself. I do 20 minutes in the morning and at least 20 minutes in the evening. The 20 minutes in the morning is all gratitude. It's just pure gratitude. My mind's on nothing else. My mind's not on work or anything. It's just, what do I have to be grateful for right now in this present moment? And I think that's probably a big practice for me. I think that practice of just slowing down and showing gratitude towards everything I currently have while not losing enthusiasm for what's to come. I think that, again, it allows me to stay in that state.
Yeah, especially if you're starting your day that way, right? So talk to me about work ethic. This is the thing I really feel is lacking in the online space. It's like everybody wants to get rich quick. They want to discover the thing, the magic pill that's going to help them become a self-made millionaire, and then people are like, well, why can't I do it? Why haven't I been able to do it? So I'm interested in your take.
Yeah. So I'd say a lot of it comes from the willingness to go further than other people are willing to. Again, a lot of it comes from my athletic background. I was used to waking up at 4:30 in the morning and not getting to bed until 11 or 11:30 sometimes. Before I moved here to Arizona, I was working full-time in special education, and I was driving for Lyft and Uber. I was living in my ex's dad's old duck hunting trailer at the back of their property, and it just sucked, but I was in that mode of building, and it was the willingness to still go out and work. I was massively depressed. I didn't like anything that was going on in my life at the time, but I was willing to go that far because I knew I had a little bit of a vision for myself. I didn't have the details of what it was going to look like, but I knew that I was supposed to do something extraordinary, and I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew this type of work right now is going to set me up to be better once I'm in that position. And so even now, coronavirus comes around, I know I'm willing to do more than the next guy in order to become successful or in order to reach that goal or gain this, this new thing in my business. I know that I'm willing to do it, and I've proven it to myself over and over again. And I think that's what most new business owners don't have yet. One, you haven't put in the repetitions. You also haven't proven to yourself that you're actually willing to put in the work. And I think once you've proven it to yourself, you don't actually have to do it every day. I don't work 16-hour days anymore. I work usually about 4 hours a day. But it's my willingness. I know as soon as I have to, I can flip that switch and immediately go back to that place of, okay, I'm just going to outwork everybody. And this is my time to not have much sleep. This is my time to not focus on happy. This is my time to focus on I need to get shit done. That willingness, I think, allows you the off time when it's okay. And I don't think those people have put in the repetitions and they haven't proven it to themselves yet, which is why they're not experiencing the type of abundance they're looking for.
Absolutely. So talk to us about what it is that you're doing now, how you help people.
Yeah. So my main business is just running Facebook and Instagram ads for all different types of businesses. I used to work with Brendan Burchard for 2.5 years. I used to volunteer at all his events in Northern California. And so I just got really in touch with the expert community, the speakers, authors, coaches, just people who are interested in more of the online business space. And so naturally, when I started an advertising business, those were my connections. That was my network. So that was naturally who I started to work with. And I just started to really get a love for people who were able to mix business with spirituality. I joke that I call myself a spiritual caveman, where I know what chakras are, but I don't know how they work. And I know what crystals are, but I don't know which one does which thing, or the planets retrograde and all that. I don't know the terms, but I know I have this deeply inset understanding of how on a spiritual basic level things are supposed to go. I know how to step into that flow. I know how to step into that thing. I just don't know what term to call it when I talk to you about it. It's just a thing that's always been in me that I get to kind of stretch now. I get to kind of use my tactical business smarts along with that just naturally ingrained thing to then help business owners who kind of do the same. You guys understand the business side and the spiritual side, and I get to help use my understanding of people and consumer psychology and, again, just that innate ability to then help make you guys money doing exactly what you currently do with no shifts, nothing else you guys have to add to your business. Just show up as yourself. And my job is to quantify you showing up as yourself.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So don't you also do some mentoring work though?
I do. I'm just starting to expand it right now. Most of it's working with younger guys who are entrepreneurs as well. In my interviews and just in life in general and my time in the online space, I've seen a lot of guys who've been very successful in business and their lives suck. Or I talk to their wives and their wives hate them and their children hate them and don't respect them. And these guys are scrambling. Now they've built this business and quote unquote provided for their families, which in the 1950s, that was great because that's all you had to do, but there was no connection. And they felt that that big piece of them was missing. And so I feel like part of my calling is to take guys who haven't really gotten to that horrible, horrible place with themselves yet in their 40s or 50s and are just starting on the journey of business. And I think part of my job is to help them build a strong foundation of self and what's actually important before you get the money or before you get the success and are allowed to blind yourself to the things that really matter. Because again, I have the information from what we're going to ask ourselves at the end of our lives. Once I understand that, I can then backtrack and say, let's start off with what's important while we're building the wealth to help do everything you want to do in life. But let's start off with these foundational pieces of who am I as a person? How do I show up in the world? How do I relate to the people around me? How do I show empathy towards my children? And that's also going to translate to business. But how do I also remain hard-headed and direct in my ability to transact in the business world, but also be able to come home and be soft with my wife and be able to be comforting to my children. And I think those are the pieces I'm trying to help people put in place as I'm also putting them in place myself. I'm not married and I don't have kids yet, but I've been studying marriage and children and relationships since I was 19 years old. Now I'm getting to step into it in my own life. I'm 25, almost 26. These next few years is now me stepping into, I get to now prove that I've actually learned and ingrained what I say I've learned and ingrained.
That's amazing. So you have a new relationship right now, which is amazing. Like I love seeing it online. You seem like ridiculously happy. And I think that's amazing. So I'm excited to see this next phase and step of your journey. And it always blows my mind that you're so young because you're so wise. You're so wise for your years. And I can't wait to see, like, you haven't even been through your Saturn return yet. So you're going to just be this like completely epic human when you come out the other end of that. So
I don't even know what that is, but I know I'm excited. When people ask, like we talk about role models, especially me being so young, people always ask me who my role model was. And I've always had the same answer. And I've always said that myself at 40 or 45, whenever I have questions just about myself and my path, my direction, I defer to an older version of myself. I really do think most of the questions we're asking about ourselves and who we're supposed to be, I think they're already in there. We just have to quiet the fuck down and listen to it. And so I always try to defer back to this 40 to 45-year-old version of myself. What can I do now to make him proud of what he has done in the past? What do I need to do now to make him have those proud memories of what he did when he was 25?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it because, you know, this is such a big part of my message right now. We are immortal souls living inside a mortal vessel. So absolutely all the versions of your immortal soul has all the answers for you. And I love that. So if you had one piece of advice for an entrepreneur who is starting to have a little bit of success in their business, what would it be?
Again, focus on a foundation, having a strong foundation of your sense of self, what you will and won't be swayed into, those moral questions, especially when we're young, of do I make this small compromise of my morality or my willingness to do something that's outside of what I know I'm supposed to be doing? Kind of setting up that moral compass is huge. And then getting that sense of identity. Here's a solidified version of who I know I am, and I'm not willing to compromise it for any amount of money or any amount of success or, you know, something somebody can offer me down the road in business.
I love it. So we're basically out of time, but there's one more thing that I wanted to talk to you about because I thought it was amazing when you did it. You recently wrote a list of affirmations for your future children.
Yeah.
So can you share a couple of them with us?
I keep rewriting the actual bullet points, but the overall theme of mine, and I'm trying to have an overall picture that I can show people, is for sons or daughters. It's this royalty mixed with humility. The view I want my children to have of themselves is the humble royal. You are made to do amazing things. You're made to do great things in this world. At the same time, you have to understand not everybody has their parents telling them these things about themselves. Not everybody has the tools that I'm instilling you with. You have to show grace, empathy, understanding for those people while not taking away from, I'm still here to do amazing shit. But the overall view I want my children to have of themselves is, I'm not supposed to do normal stuff. Normal stuff isn't good enough for me, but I can also understand why other people are good enough for the normal. And I don't look down on them. I don't see them as any lesser than, but I also don't see myself as needing to have the same lower standards for my own actions, how I view myself, how I carry myself. And I hope and think that it'll instill an individuality in my kids super, super early on so that they don't really ever have a problem being different than the other kids in class.
I love it. So it's like ruling with benevolence, right? And true compassion.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's something that's admirable for even adults now. That's the type of person I'd love to embody. So why not teach it? Like, imagine if you've always just been told that your entire life. I think most people would strive much, much further than they did in life if they'd always been told you're supposed to be amazing. You're an internal soul. If you've had that message from birth, how much more would you have pushed when you pulled back? How much more of yourself would you have squeezed out of yourself if you hadn't been told you can just stop there?
I love it. Thank you so much for coming and being on the show. This has been an absolute pleasure. You can find Kyree on all the socials, and we'll definitely drop his social media links so you can go and follow him in the description of the podcast episode. He is just Kyree on Instagram, Kyree, and he is Kyrie Oliver 1994 on Facebook. That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me. Remember, wealth is a mindset, and you absolutely deserve to live the life you deeply desire. And with belief and intention, you create your reality. Until next time, this is Leah Steele, the Wealth Witch.